Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. And a very warm welcome to Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. It's been a very interesting 7 days to be a DC fan. I have found it thoroughly educational. What normally happens when a DC movie is released in the past few years is you get the hardcore DC fans who will love it and shill it no matter how good or bad it is. Then you'll get the other side of the fan base, the Snyderverse fan base, being really shitty about it, no matter what condition the movie's in. Just remember the uncomfortable things they said about the Batman movie, a 3-hour epic Batman movie. But this time, with the release of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, things have changed. Yes, the fandom's still divided, but really the louder voices and the toxicity has come from the industry itself. Warner Brothers Discovery. Some of the people that have worked on Shazam! Fury of the Gods are very bitter, twisted and angry. They blame the fans. They've blamed The Rock. They blamed everyone who's a bloody live. It's been thoroughly embarrassing. So there's more to this than the division within the fan base this time. And it's come from the industry itself. So I find that very, very interesting. And I found it very educational when they blamed The Rock, because that was a new low. And what Zachary Levi did was absolutely disgusting. But if we look at Black Adam made 400 million globally without China. Shazam! Fury of the Gods isn't even going to make that with China. In fact, it's been a disaster in China. So as I say, it's been a very educational time. Now we know that David Zaslav doesn't take failure laying down. Last time Henry Cavill and The Rock as Black Adam, you know, they paid with their DC careers. So who's going to have to pay the price this time? Well, there's only one common narrative within Shazam! Fury of the Gods, the first Shazam, and that's Peter Safran, who's now the co-CEO of DC Studios. So don't be surprised if he either walks or is removed. A very similar situation to the Victoria Alonso situation. But they're done with blaming fans now. They're done with trying to blame The Rock. Now they're trying to distract us. And with some very, very interesting situations. An actor from the Blue Beetle movie is teasing a first trailer very, very soon. Interesting timing. We've been waiting for this for a very long time. God knows what we're going to get, you know, after what's happened recently. And James Gunn says, although he hasn't started the casting process for Superman Legacy yet, he's writing down a list. Interesting. And Superman won't necessarily be 20 years old. So he's not necessarily looking for a 20-year-old actor. So he hasn't started the casting process yet. But on the week where there's so much negativity going around in the DC universe, he just happens to mention that he's not into the casting process, but he's writing a list. Isn't that part of the casting process? I'm calling out bullshit on this. What is the development of this movie? How realistic is this movie that it's even going to take off? No pun intended. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because when someone suddenly goes, well, because don't forget, he's been saying all along that he don't even think about casting till after he writes the script. Well, as far as I know, he's still writing the script of this movie. And don't forget, you don't just write one version of your script. You rewrite, you go back, you know, you could do 3 or 4 versions of the same movie in script form. It happens all the time. You don't just write one script and go, right, we're making it now. That's not how simplistic these things are done. There's a lot of money invested in this. You know, they've got to cross the I's, dot the T's, even though they have 4 or 5 drafts these days of their movies on script form, they still fuck up these movies. I wonder how many drafts Shazam! Fury of the Gods got. I wonder how many drafts The Last Jedi had. We are in a very, very, you know, creative creatively bankrupt era in Hollywood. I don't think you people understand what trouble the entertainment industry as a whole is right now. And I mean the Western entertainment industry, the English-speaking entertainment industry. They've gaslit their customer, their fans. They've abused us. They've become ultra-political. It's crazy. Out here in Cyprus, right, the left wing sit on one side where there's restaurants and cafes, and the right wing sit on the other. That's what they do. There's right-wing cafes and there's left-wing cafes. That's what it is. Now, I'm more left than right, but I'll sit on both. I don't give a shit, and I'll sit there and they'll go to me, "Oh, Mick, what do you vote?" I say, "I don't vote, crap system, you lot of mugs." And they all look at me, it goes quiet for 5 minutes, and they buy me a drink, That's, I'm a fucking nutter. I say whatever I want. You've seen me on Twitter, you've seen me on here. I don't care what I say. I speak from this, and I always will. And I'm not intimidated by entertainers, elites, or millionaires. And I never will be. The fact of the matter is that what's happened in the past 7 days with Shazam, Fury of the Gods, has been utterly, utterly educational to me. Because even David F. Sandberg, who comes across as a really nice guy, is acting like a bit of a bitch. Yesterday, he started referencing the fact that fans believe there's this kind of secret scene in the first Shazam movies, when all the Shazam family are sitting there, right, in that cave thing, where, the wizard Shazam and the other kind of gods used to sit, that place. And, Sandberg is denying that this scene exists. It's some kind of deleted scene that he denies. So he goes, "I'm enjoying seeing everyone lose their minds." Isn't that new Hollywood? Literally, you've got a director of a movie that's a bomb, and he's abusing the fans. He's saying, "I'm enjoying seeing fans lose their minds. Do you know what? I'm going to buy you a pint of fucking bitter, because that would suit you very well, Mr. Sandberg. I think you're a very, very bitter little man, and I believe that Zachary Levi is a bitter little man as well. But, of course, you're just serving your studio, because they really don't know what to do next. Is DC in a good place? No. Has it got a good future? No. Where's its future? Old James Gunn is going to save DC, is he, with his little list, even though he's not in a casting process right now. Look, I find this whole situation very, very hilarious and funny. No, I don't want DC to fail, but it's interesting, isn't it? Now, there's another side to all this. You've got Mr. Zack Snyder, and he's very, very clever right now. He's got Jim Lee to do a bit of art, for SnyderCon 2. He's drawn a picture of Superman and Batman or whatever he's doing. Zack Snyder's got Jim Lee doing this. Jim Lee, as far as I know, is still running DC Comics as a whole. He had that position under AT&T. I don't think they've changed that position. It's interesting. And, but it's interesting that Jim Lee doesn't seem to have any position at DC Studios. But apart from Peter Safran and James Gunn, it doesn't look like anyone has a position at DC Studios. So I think that Zaslav is ready to flip out any moment. Because I don't believe the instructions to play the blame game with The Rock and the fans is down to David Zaslav. I think this is from the Peter Safran school of villainy, if you like. I think it's coming from Safran. I think Safran is a very, very nervous individual. He may be the co-CEO of DC Studios, but as I said earlier, and many times before, he did produce Shazam, and he did produce Shazam, Fury of the Gods. So this is a big problem for Peter, because if there's someone to blame for all of this, it's him. So you can blame him. He produced it. He produced Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Where was he when The Rock was making all these decisions? Where was he during the production of Shazam, Fury of the Gods? Why didn't Peter Safran solve the issue with The Rock? Who made the decision to put The Rock in charge of the Shazam universe? Because I'll defend the Black Adam movie, because I did have a good time with it. I still don't think we didn't need a Black Adam movie. I think it's utterly stupid. and clown-like behaviour to allow The Rock, an ex-wrestler, to be in charge of an element of DC live action. It was an absolute mistake. And this was before, but to be fair, this was before Safran's time, before Walter Hamada's time. This situation had been going on for a very long time. But who greenlit the Black Adam movie? That's interesting. Was it Hamada? Was it Johnsonberg? It certainly wasn't Zack Snyder. Not that Zack Snyder had green lighting capabilities anyway, but he was running the DC Extended Universe. He was the one running it from the very beginning. You know, when Nolan brought him on, he said, you know, you're running this thing, it's your baby. And, you know, Nolan tried to protect him during the production of Man of Steel. Regrettably, Nolan wasn't around during BVS to protect that. So you've got this disaster area that is DC right now. Look, they're not the only franchise that's a disaster area. Marvel's a disaster, Star Wars is a disaster, the whole industry is a whole fucking disaster because they drove all the talented people out and they brought in a bunch of activists whose last fault is on entertaining the audience. And all these crazy, dumb, thick activists can do is double down on their own behaviour. You know, and that's the problem. So you've got a bunch of activists running the entertainment industry now, and nobody has a clue because they're going bankrupt. They're losing money. They don't know what to do. This is not just a WB Discovery problem, it's an industry problem. But we're here to talk about DC and that corner of Hollywood. What do they do next? Because this is the situation they've got. Because you've got the Flash movie, which is supposed to be the best thing ever, right? We'll wait and see. Tom Cruise, if it's not, your reputation is toast, mate. Did you really give these idiots permission to leak that you saw the Flash movie and you liked it? I think, look, this tickles me. This situation is utterly desperate, and it really does tickle me that they happened to mention that he met David Zaslav and he wanted to see the Flash movie. I mean, it's weird. Is Tom Cruise a Flash fan? I've never heard him say he's a Flash fan. Maybe he is a Flash fan. I don't know. I don't fucking get it. It's utterly weird to me. Anyway, so you've got that utterly strange situation which comes from nowhere and just shows how nervous Zaslav is. Now, someone, a box office analyst on Twitter, made a very good point that they should never have released this year's movies. But guess who said that from the beginning? I said it. Don't release these fucking movies. They're nothing to do with what you're doing in the future. There's no fucking point to them. Just bin them and start again. I said that, didn't I? How many times did we have this debate, people? Bin them. Get rid of them. And I think a couple of people go, you can't get rid of them. It's not fair. It's bad enough that Henry Cavill isn't coming back. But what's the point in these fucking movies? And I've swayed that way towards their relevance and whether I'm excited about them or not. I'm always excited about DC movies. I revealed to you yesterday I've seen Shazam! Fury of the Gods 4 times. It's a solid, okay movie. I'll buy it when it's released on digital. And because it's a flop, they're going to release it on digital early next month. It'll probably be out on physical media, pretty soon after that as well, because they need to make their money back. They're never. I mean, look, and it was really funny how nervous they were about this from the very beginning. When it came out that they were only going to make about like 30 to 40 million, like domestically in the opening weekend, they started putting out via Deadline that it was a very cheap movie to make and it only cost 100 million. That was a lie. That was trying to protect the reputation that the movie was going to bomb. Well, the movie has bombed, and I get no pleasure out of that. I've said this a billion times. Yes, I'm a Zack Snyder DCEU fan, but I'm not a here for Zack person. I say this every day, but I have to remind everyone where I stand. My stance is that I love DC as a whole. I love the comics. Now, I haven't read every single fucking comic ever printed. There's a lot of comics I've never read. I'm predominantly a movie and TV viewer rather than a religious comic book reader. I've said that, but that's all right. I can still call myself a DC fan because I love DC End of fucking story. So that's where I am. So I don't sit here like other Snyderverse stands and go, oh, I want this to fail so I can spread propaganda. No. But really, when you look at it, the past 5 movies have all failed. You know, and whatever reason, we can throw COVID excuses for James Gunn's The Suicide Squad and Wonder Woman 84. Wonder Woman 84 would have had a big opening weekend, but it would have had a huge Batman versus Superman type of drop-off in its second week. Because it's such a bad movie. And that isn't just my opinion, it's a universal fucking opinion. And even though, like, initial scores on Rotten Tomatoes were good, it dropped very, very quickly. So that film would have flopped. I think if James Gunn's The Suicide Squad wasn't day and date and wasn't during a peak of a variant of the COVID pandemic, I think that film maybe, looking at what it made, which was just over 200 million, maybe have doubled that or even at least got to 500 million, which is still shit. Because most of the fans, including me, because it's James Gunn and the trailers look great and it's a bloody good film, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. That's the thing. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is probably the best out of the past 5 DCEU flops. So I think if it wasn't for the pandemic, maybe it would have crept to around 500 million. And I mean, that film, was it expensive? I think it cost a bit of money. But I mean, they would have been more happier with it. But it's still not good. It's still not good. But it didn't reach 500 million, so it's a moot point. 5 movies failing in a row. But we said this, didn't we? What's the point of releasing these movies? They're releasing The Flash because they think this is their best chance of making some money back. And that's why they're putting out propaganda about Tom Cruise watching the movie. But I saw through it straight away. I mean, a lot of people say to me, it's really exciting, isn't it? It's hype, isn't it? Look, if Tom Cruise came to see one of my plays here in Cyprus and he liked it, I'd get a fucking orgasm and the biggest boner I've ever fucking had. Of course I fucking would, right? I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if they're paying him to put his name on this movie. I don't understand where that shit came from. And it's like this random shit. And this is what happens with DC. All of a sudden, right, you hear some random weird shit. And you think to yourself, how? What the fuck? What the fuck's going on here? You know, when a Shazam Fury of the Gods film is released, when a DC film is released and it fails, and then you've got the director and the star of the film blaming fans and then blaming The Rock, you know. And, you know, Sandberg started from the very beginning. We were going to have one post-credit scene, then we couldn't have that, so we had to do another. We know. We understand. We know The Rock was problematic. No one's trying to say The Rock wasn't problematic. But as I mentioned yesterday, when his film failed, he didn't blame anyone but himself. He took it. He took it. Now, I don't know what he gets up to behind the scenes and how he treats people behind the scenes, but I do know one thing. Publicly, the man's an absolute gentleman. And you know, I used to work in a toy shop, and when the kids used to walk in, I'd be, hello, how are you? And at the back, we'd be saying, fucking little brats, can't stand them. You know, but you don't abuse your fucking customers like they do in Hollywood. Like, to their faces, you're nice. At the back, we were getting pissed on lager. I mean, the manager and one of the shop girls would be shagging up against the warehouse wall. You know, but it doesn't matter how people conduct themselves behind the scenes of a consumer-based industry. It's how they conduct themselves in front of the camera, on the shop floor. That's what it's all about. I don't care if you're problematic behind the scenes. I don't care what you do behind the scenes. But when you're in interviews, when you're on social media, you damn need to conduct yourself in the right way. When, you know, and as long as you're professional, when you're making your shit, that's fine. And I expect people not to get on with each other behind the scenes. People are people, right? You know, everyone, most people have families, right? We go and spend time with our families. There's some members of our families we prefer more than others. There's arsehole members of our families. Some may say, I'm that member of the family. Hey, you know, it's all about opinions, right? But the point is, when we're in front of everyone, we pretend we're a united family. Well, my family decided not to do that anymore, but most families do, right? So it's very, very interesting to me how they've attempted to expose The Rock, and I don't like it, and I don't care how he behaved behind the scenes, that he didn't want a Shazam crossover and all of that. This is not, look, okay, let's tear up this movie of Shazam! Fury of the Gods. Obviously, if The Rock allowed Shazam 2 or Shazam 1 to have Black Adam versus Shazam, the film, you would imagine, would make a lot more money. Of course, there would be a lot more interest. The problem goes deeper than that for me, because I don't agree with, shitting on The Rock, and at least he conducted himself well during his failure, but I don't think The Rock should ever have been involved with DC or Black Adam or even played Black Adam. But I'll go deeper than that as well. I don't think Zachary Levi should ever have been cast as Shazam. Zachary Levi is a television actor. That's where he's from. He came from Chuck. He guest starred on other things. That's where his strengths are. Yes, and his voice work for Tangled was beautiful. And he was in the first 4 films, but barely. He barely said anything or had any screen time in that movie. He's not a movie star. Zachary Levi isn't someone you cast as a main superhero character. Guess who cast him? Peter Safran, because they're really, really good friends. Now, nobody's talking about this because everyone's too busy blaming the fans, the Snyder fans, and The Rock for this situation. But the truth of the matter is, Zachary Levi is one of the many reasons why people weren't interested in this film. Now, the concept of Captain Marvel Jr., Captain Marvel, aka Shazam, is that this little boy becomes an adult version of himself. Look, basically, right, the concept is he suddenly becomes a superhero. So he still has this childish mentality. It's still the same person. My problem with the Shazam first movie, even though I prefer it to the second movie, is they go down this big thing where, oh my God, I'm big. And that is the concept. But they went a lot more for the comedy. And there's a lot of epicness around the original Captain Marvel comics. And it isn't kind of this gag reel of MCU cringe behavior. And Levi, when you look at his performance, both in the first movie and the second movie, is very, very cringy, if you ask me. And that's not Captain Marvel, aka Shazam from the comics. In the comics, he's literally a strongman. He's literally Superman. Basically, Captain Marvel, Shazam, is wish fulfillment. Basically, it's a little boy who's powerless, literally becoming like Superman. That's what it is. It's like, if there's any kids watching this, or if there's any people who've always felt powerless in their lives, it's like getting this chance to become a superhero. You look up to Superman, you look up to other superheroes, and all of a sudden, you become that very thing, and you become a member of the Justice League. It's wish fulfillment. But Zachary Levi's Shazam, really, to me, is a bit of a joke. Zachary Levi is a solid, good, talented actor. But he's not a movie star. He's not Chris Hemsworth as Thor. He's not Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. He's not Christopher Reeve as Superman. He's not Henry Cavill as Superman. He's not Ben Affleck as Batman. He doesn't work. It's as simple as that. He doesn't work. It never worked. And people couldn't be asked to go to cinemas to see him star in another movie. And there's another problem here, because Zachary Levi doesn't speak about his fellow cast members, which I think is very interesting. Do they get on with Levi? That's another interesting thing as well. Asher Angel, a talented up-and-coming young actor, barely got any screen time in this movie. Why? And I think someone suggested if we do get more Shazam from David Sandberg, which I don't think we will, I think someone was saying, why can't Asher Angel play younger Shazam and older Shazam? And I think that would be wonderful. He's a very, very strong young actor. Jack Dylan Grazer is another really good, strong, young actor. You've got You've got young Grace, who plays Mary Marvel. We'd like to see her in a spin-off. There's lots of different things. But I think they have to drop Levi. And Peter Safran is not going to go for that because literally he got his mate the job. Basically, excuse me, basically Hollywood is about mates race, getting mates jobs. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. And it's not about talent. And it's even worse these days. At least back in the olden days, they wanted the best people for the job. So, yeah, they all had the same DNA. They're all part of, it's a family business, as they say. But at least the family was fucking talented. At least the family was the fucking godfather and not Zachary Levi. And he's running around like he's some big movie star, begging for work, begging to be in Star Wars, begging to be this, hashtagging this one, hashtagging that one. It's fucking embarrassing. I mean, I would never do that. Never. When I got to Hollywood, I never used to bother creators. You know, I've got a pitch, you know, like they do. You know, like some people bother people. I could never do that. Probably why I was never successful. But I did want to learn about the business, and I learned a lot about it. And that's why now I can talk about it. I can be informed about my opinion on the business. I don't mind that one community of people run Hollywood. I don't mind that. Every industry is run by a certain community. What annoys me is that they lie, that they're representative, inclusive, kind and compassionate. They're none of those things. If you're not going to speak the truth, if you're not going to be genuine about representation and inclusion and telling good stories, at least have the good manners not to fucking mention it ever again. But they don't. They moralize against other people. They're so political. It's unbelievable. And it's embarrassing at this stage. But there you go, everyone. So there we are with DC. So I don't feel excited. I do feel excited about the Joker 2 movie, Joker Folie à Deux. I do feel excited about the Batman 2 and the Penguin. I think those side of things are going to be absolutely fucking brilliant. And they're the kind of projects we need to be focusing on. But in terms of the DCEU, a defunct universe that has never worked, certainly since Zack Snyder left, and I loved those movies. So for me, they work no matter of the box office. That's a different debate for a different time. The DCEU is dead. I don't know if people are going to love The Flash or hate The Flash, or love Blue Beetle or hate Blue Beetle. Same with Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. I have no idea. What I do know is that people are done with connected universes. They don't want them. They don't work. It's happening at Marvel. It's always been happening at DC. People are more interested in projects like Joker and the Batman. And this is the direction that DC need to go in. And if they do not go in this direction, if they continue to go with James Gunn off the fucking plane without a parachute, it's going to end in more tears. But it's, as I say, it's been a very educational time in the past 7 days to actually see, you know, industry professionals blaming their customers, blaming their audience, blaming The Rock blatantly. They can't deal with their own shit secretly and quietly. They're fighting publicly. They're fighting in plain sight. Don't you understand how terrible that is? Don't you think it's embarrassing for a young actress like Rachel Zegler to be abusing the customer, the fans? Don't you think that's embarrassing? Don't you think that's a bad fucking look? No? You think it's good? You think it's good that this once beautiful industry has been taken over by activists, and activists are running it into the fucking ground and into bankruptcy? What is going to happen? What is going to happen next? Basically, I can't see it changing. I think they will continue to do what they're doing. And at DC, I don't know what's going to happen. Because the problem is, at first I was saying, yeah, DC Studios, baby. Well, Peter Safran's a producer and Gunn's a director. That's a good mix. Having two people running a DC Studios with those different qualities is a good thing. But my problem is, Safran was part of the Hamadaverse. So what's going to change with this new DC Studios, DC Universe? That's what I'm asking you. Let me know in the comments below. This has been Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wife. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. And I'll see you again in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.